Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me in another video. So as you can tell based on the title, today we are going to be talking about Gucci. I actually wanted to cover something completely different today, but because this is a major story, it's one of the biggest stories. There's a lot of big stories, a lot of major moves happening, but because Gucci is one of the biggest luxury brands, we have to talk about it. So as we know, Sabato de Sarno was let go from Gucci last month. This was really only weeks before the Gucci Fall Winter 2025 collection was scheduled to go down the runway. According to the brand, that collection was done by the design team, but I think Sabato de Sarno probably had some hand in that collection. But the big news is Gucci has now announced Demna as their new artistic director. So we'll talk about potential reasons why Demna was chosen, general thoughts, my thoughts. I did a poll asking you guys what you thought about this move. Let's just get into it. So I think one main reason why Demna was chosen was because he's a recognizable name. We've talked about what has been going down at Gucci, their earnings, how they've done as a brand annually. We've gone over their earnings calls, what luxury analysts and investors have been saying. And while Gucci took a bet on hiring an unknown designer like Sabato de Sarno. Of course, he was Pier Paolo's second in command at Valentino, but he wasn't like a major name, and it didn't quite work. Many have argued that Gucci needs someone with strong name recognition, and I also think this has been suggested because there have been a lot of free agents, or at least we don't know what's happening with them. They could very well be working on something and we just don't know it, but names like Eddie Slimane, John Galliano, Pier Paolo Pacioli, Maria Grazia Chiuri. She's still at Dior, but it is suspected that she may be moving on. But a lot of names have been speculated for many different reasons. Obviously, those designers were not chosen, and Demna is a recognizable name. So that was something that has been expressed, that it should be somebody that isn't a second in command or an unknown designer, and it should be a major name. And of course, Demna is a name that is widely recognized. At least he's very controversial. Most people have, even if they don't know him or Balenciaga, they've probably in some article have seen, oh, look at this ridiculous towel skirt, or look at the teddy bear campaign, right? Of course there was that. That was probably one of his most controversial moments, the teddy bears with the harnesses, and of course there was that other campaign with the Supreme Court documents. I'm trying to keep this very YouTube friendly when describing this, but we all remember, you don't need me to rehash that conversation. That was something that reached mainstream news attention. A lot of different outlets were talking about it, not just outlets and people interested in fashion. It was a major story, and because of that, it also resulted in many people, a lot of luxury consumers, even consumers of the brand, actually canceling the brand, selling off their Balenciaga, vowing to never buy Demna again, because those campaigns were just so disturbing. Because it wasn't just one campaign, it was those two separate campaigns with the teddy bears, with the Supreme Court document. It just felt like this wasn't just a coincidence. Of course, Demna did apologize. Balenciaga has committed to supporting children's health organizations and social justice causes, but Demna is a recognized name. They did meet that criteria in terms of what they were looking for. And of course, with that, the designer with experience. Gucci wanted somebody that knew what they were doing. Of course, he's led Balenciaga for the past decade. He co-founded Vetements. I don't think they were at this point where they could, again, hire someone who had to learn on the job, who had to find their footing, had to find their groove. I don't think Gucci has the time for that. There's a lot more urgency right now to turn the ship around. Of course, Gucci is the biggest brand at Kering. It determines the success of the conglomerate. If Gucci is down, no matter how well Bottega or YSL or Balenciaga or McQueen are doing, Gucci is what determines the success of Kering. And it's one of the largest luxury brands in the world, probably somewhere around like the fourth or probably fifth largest luxury fashion brand. It is Kering's crown jewel. And Gucci also appointed a new CEO at the beginning of this year, Stefano Cantino, because this is a new role for him, to have someone that is more experienced, that knows how to lead a team, knows how Kering works, and knows what is expected of him by Kering. Another reason why I think Demna was considered is because Gucci is first and foremost a leather goods, a handbags and accessories brand, if we're being so real. Yes, they do fashion. Yes, they have runways, and we're going to see that. But the success of Gucci relies on the success of their handbags, shoes, accessories, belts, leather goods, things like that. And Demna has proven that he, at Balenciaga during his term, there were some of the hottest accessories. We all remember the Triple S shoes. Personally, I had to get a pair of the knife heels that were really popular like late 2010s. Last year, there was the Balenciaga Rodeo. That was probably one of the most viral handbags of 2024. Of course, because it had that Jane Birkinified look, as in it was worn in and it was decked out with bag charms. Balenciaga and Miu Miu, they really were the leaders when it came to that trend. Of course, another style that they've had since has been the Bel Air. Balenciaga has had some hit pieces, and of course they've also had some very viral like talking point pieces like the chip bag, the garbage bag, the shoebox bag, the shoe bag, the boot bag, accessories like tape as a bracelet, like things like that that get instantly talked about. Versus Sabato de Sarno, while I felt what he was bringing felt a lot more elegant, a lot more elevated, people just weren't really talking about the bags. One thing I will say though is Gucci is, or at least was, a $10 billion brand. Now I think it's just under 8 billion euros, just around that point. But I personally wonder, does this style, does this look, does this aesthetic of handbags have that kind of mass appeal? For Balenciaga, it was a much smaller brand. So I think taking this approach really worked. He found a lot of success at like this brand that was a lot smaller, right? Still a very large luxury brand, very known. A lot of people talk about it. I wonder if his style, like the style of Balenciaga Vêtements, perhaps he takes a different direction, but if the style that we know Demna for doing, that is intentionally very contrarian, I don't know if it has the same mass appeal, but maybe that doesn't matter because at least it's something that gets talked about, even if it's so absurd. If Demna decides to put like a plastic bag with a GG logo or GG monogram on the runway and it generates a lot of media buzz, what can happen is you're reminded of the Gucci Jackie bag, or there's a really nice pair of loafers. It could have that kind of effect, but I think it could also turn off a lot of people as well. Another reason why he was likely picked is because he's part of Kering. He's familiar with the CEOs. He knows how this conglomerate works. He knows what's expected of him. Of course, hearing this news, I was reminded of the Gucci Balenciaga hacker project. That was a very viral moment. It was a very convenient collaboration for Kering. And of course, if Demna goes to Gucci, there's no non-compete. Like, he doesn't have to do a non-compete because he's just ready to go, right? Another reason why he's being heavily considered is because he does already come with his own base of customers. Of course, Balenciaga is nowhere near the size of Gucci, but he still does have a serious base of fans that will follow him regardless. There are some designers that just have this kind of pull, that have like this kind of following. I think he's also that kind of designer that gets a lot of people into fashion versus Sabato de Sarno, or if they hire like, you know, an unknown, a second in command, they have to start from scratch again. And so at least they can guarantee there will be like a solid base of support. I did read this morning from multiple outlets how Kering shares have gone down since the announcement though. This from Reuters: Kering lost around $3 billion in stock market value on Friday after the group chose in-house talent Demna to reinvigorate its Gucci label rather than hiring one of fashion's big ticket names as chief designer. Kering's shares fell by up to 13% in morning trade in Paris and were on track for their worst day in almost a year following the appointment of Balenciaga designer Demna. JP Morgan analysts called Demna's appointment a, quote, controversial choice, citing early feedback on social media and fashion blogs and a question mark now hanging over the brand's creative future. Some analysts are wondering who is driving the bus. Bernstein analyst Luca Solca said, citing a string of bad news at the group, including expensive brand and real estate acquisitions, several profit warnings, and now the upheaval of Gucci's design chief. And reading this, it's really no surprise. I just don't know if a broader luxury customer base, the base of people that would want to spend $3,000 to $4,000 on a handbag, $900 on loafers, if they would want to do it with Demna as creative designer. Luxury is already in a slump. Yes, Demna is a renowned name. We all know him. He's a star designer. He knows how Kering works, but if I think about where luxury is at, can he really be enough of a pull? Does Demna bring that kind of halo effect to Gucci? Apparently the executives at Kering did meet up with Demna a few months ago, and they were really impressed with what he proposed. So maybe Demna is going to bring something that we've never seen to the table before, that is different from Vetements, that is different from Balenciaga. Another point that was mentioned during the last earnings call, Francesca Bellettini stated how they wanted to bring the quote fashion back. For the last earnings call, Kering did have to explain what happened the last year. They stated that they spent the last 18 months during the Sabato era focusing on the heritage, and there was this elevation strategy. Of course, Gucci, along with many other brands, in recent years have upped their prices. Of course, the numbers reflect that many customers weren't buying into it as much as they had in the past, or at least to the same extent as they were buying into the Alessandro Michele era creations. And during the earnings call, Francesca Bellettini stated that because they had this period of elevation in terms of going back to the heritage, we did see more of a quiet luxury direction. It wasn't the same maximalism from Alessandro Michele. They now stated that they wanted to go back to this quote fashion direction. So Demna is going to have to bring this fashion back to Gucci. Now, one thing I will say is I just don't know if Demna's aesthetic, the look he has been going for basically a decade now. Of course, it has changed here and there with various collections, but I think Demna's style hit its peak pre-pandemic, like just right before the pandemic. It was at its coolest. I just don't know if it has that same like aura of coolness. I will admit, when I saw his earlier Balenciaga collections, I thought they were very exciting. Back then, I did buy a pair of those knife heels, the political logo. I thought that was hilarious. There was that humor and irony, and there was this coolness about it. I also love that collection where it looked like they were at some global IMF meeting or something. But it very quickly to me became just very repetitive, very uninteresting. And maybe this is just a personal style evolution, and I'll admit that. I did buy the one thing from his era, but I would never say I was like a Demna fan. But I could like recognize that there was something interesting he was doing here. I just don't know if Demna's style feels as relevant as it used to be. I do think there is a new wave in fashion that is happening, but I just don't know if Demna is it. I think what they're trying to do here is they want to make Gucci loud again. Like they don't want to go in this quiet luxury direction. This is Demna's style. There is sort of a loudness, a branding aspect comparable to like the Alessandro Michele era. There is sort of that commonality, but the other thing about Demna is he brings that controversy, he brings that shock factor. I do think if there is anything he has in common with the Tom Ford or the Alessandro Michele eras is that shock factor, that willing to go places where other designers aren't willing to go. He's also going to have one more final collection at Balenciaga. It's going to be the Couture collection this July, and that will be his final bow at Balenciaga. I did a poll because I was very curious to see what you guys thought of this news. Now, 29% of viewers can't wait for Demna's Gucci, and 71% selected it's the end of Gucci. I know it's a bit dramatic, I know, but I do think Gucci is on its last legs at this point. Gucci has been suffering a lot recently. It could be the final nail in the coffin, or it could be a new era that no one could have ever conceived of. Now, in terms of what you guys were saying in the comments, Gucci needed to class it up, not trash it up. It's a shame about the brand. They used to be so well respected. Another commentator, Gucci was long over after Mr. Ford left, and it took for Michele to revive the brand before he himself left too. So at this point, the house needs electroshock therapy, and Demna could possibly do it. I hope his vision is the opposite of what he did at Balenciaga and Vetements. Away with the gimmicky homeless chic crap and bring back the sex lux glamour. I agree. I hope it's not the same gimmicky homeless chic or whatever he's going for. Another commenter, bruh, him over Sabato. Listen, I wasn't a huge fan of his output, but he just started. And then someone said Demna was hot when he just started, and then they respond, yeah, perhaps, but he was firmly in the doghouse for at least 3 years at least, and making shittier and shittier collections, Demna of 10 years ago is not representative of his current quality. Another person says, just happy Balenciaga will get a new vision. Another user says, oh, poop emoji. Another person says, canceling John Galliano once upon a time, but not this P word is an F abomination. I'll never buy Gucci till he's fired. Another person says, how horrific, this guy should have been sacked for the disgusting ad campaign at Balenciaga, but no, they kept him and now he's going to ruin Gucci. What are they thinking? And then someone responds, money over everything. Another person responds, I think he makes more sense at Gucci than at Balenciaga. Then someone says, is that true? Yes, it is true. Now, a question many people are asking is who should go to Balenciaga? Personally, I am actually really exhausted thinking about this after this week. There's other stories I could be talking about. Of course, the same day, Donatella leaves Versace, Dario Vitale joins Versace. This is just getting exhausting. It used to be exciting when a brand has a new creative director signaling a new era. It's getting exhausting at this point. Like, how can these brands expect to develop a loyal following? Because what? A designer joins a brand, they may stay for 18 months and then they may leave because sales are down or another opportunity emerges. But the names that I'm hearing are Peter Mullier, Galliano, Daniel Roseberry. So I'm sure any of those names could probably do the job. I actually think Daniel Roseberry is really finding his groove and developing a loyal customer base at Schiaparelli. Same with Peter Mullier. They're building up the worlds of these brands. And of course, Balenciaga is a bigger brand. There's more resources, and I'm sure a nice paycheck comes along with that. But another thing Kering typically does is they usually go for new designers or like unknown designers. So I wouldn't be surprised if they hire an emerging name or a second in command. It still is a coveted position. Balenciaga still is a major brand, has a major legacy to pull from. And this is Gucci's final Hail Mary. It's a huge risk and so much rides on Demna's success. The fate of Kering is in Demna's hands. I also think it could be a potential for Demna to reset. It could be his, I don't want to say redemption arc, but I do think ever since that scandal, he's been canceled in a lot of people's minds. And I just think some of his recent collections post-scandal haven't been as exciting or, you know, of course he had the Rodeo bag. That was a really great bag and that was a great moment for him. But I don't think level of success that he had, like I would say pre-pandemic. Of course, that's just my personal opinion, and I know I'm gonna have people in the comments probably upset that I'm not like praising Demna. I will say I do think he's the kind of designer that is willing to go places that other designers aren't willing to go in a very controversial way. It's just not something I personally gravitate towards, and that's just what it is at the end of the day. I don't gravitate towards this like style. I don't see myself becoming a Gucci girl under Demna, and I do think it's an incredible risk for Kering, for Gucci, and with a high risk, it could be a high reward, but if it's not, it could very well be the downfall of Kering. So much of the success of Kering rides on this move with Demna. But I would love to know, what do you guys think about this move? Are you excited about Demna going to Gucci? Do you think this is a bad move? Do you think Kering made a big mistake? Please let me know down below. Thank you so much for joining me in another one, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!